Hello, and welcome to the Producers Guild conversation with the creative team behind Malcolm and Marie. We'd like to thank our friends at Netflix for making this event possible. It is my pleasure to introduce our moderator today, Stephanie Allain. Stephanie Allain is one of the most prolific African-American film producers working today. Her award-winning films by writer-directors of color make headlines, launch careers, and shape the cultural landscape. Critical acclaim includes Oscars, Independent Spirit Awards, NAACP, and Image Awards, and worldwide recognition at festivals around the globe. Miss Allain started her film career at Columbia Pictures, where she championed John Singleton's directorial debut, Boyz n the Hood, and stayed for a decade supervising independently spirited films. In 2003, she found Homegrown Pictures and produced award-winning films such as Hustle and Flow, Something New, Beyond the Lights, Dear White People, and many more. She sits on the board of Women in Film and the Producers Guild of America, and she is a member of gender parity organizations Reframe and Time's Up. In 2019, Variety named her an agent of change. Welcome, Stephanie. Welcome, panelists. And please, Stephanie, take it away.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. I am Stephanie Allain. I'll be moderating today's conversation with this incredibly talented producing team of Malcolm and Marie. So please welcome Sam Levinson and Ashley Levinson, Kevin Turen, John David Washington, and Zendaya. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to talk to you about your movie. Look,
thanks for having us.
Everybody was sitting around in, March, April saying, we've got to do something. What are we going to do? We should make a movie. And while we all sat around talking about it, you guys went out and did it in record time from inception to sales. So we're going to start there with Sam. So tell us about how this came to be. What was your inspiration? How did it come together?
Well, we had been shut down on Euphoria season 2 a day before we were supposed to start shooting. So naturally, Z and I were talking a lot throughout just that whole time. Are we going to change scripts? When are we coming back? And at some point, Z was like, "Can we just shoot a movie in my house?" And so I started just pitching her crazy idea after crazy idea, and she's like, "I'm not sure about those ideas," and she said, and I started talking to Ash about it too and everything. And we got the word from HBO that we were now going to be shut down until September, which actually gave us a true open window to go do something if we wanted. I looked at Ash and I said, what if it's just a simple premise? It's a filmmaker who forgets to thank his partner on the night of a premiere and they come home. And we just burst into laughter, because I may have done that once in my life. Granted, it didn't turn out the same way that Malcolm and Marie's argument does. We had a very kind of calm, level-headed discussion about it on the car ride home, but it still made me, it still brought up all of these kind of thoughts in my head about what happens when you don't acknowledge the contributions of the people in your life and to your work. And I thought it was an interesting jumping off point. I told Z, we started kicking it around. I started to write. The moment I started writing, I thought the only human being I can possibly think of who can go toe to toe with Z for 12 rounds is John David Washington. I knew him a little bit through his sister, Katia Washington, who's a producer on this film, along with a number of other projects we've done together. And I loved his work so much. I was such a massive fan of him. I cold called him, asked him if he'd be interested. He said he'd be interested. I called Z back. I said, he's interested. I read him the first 8 pages. She's like, was it a yes? And I was like, well, I didn't get like a full yes. And she was like, well, you got to get a yes. So I was like, all right, fine. And I just kept writing, and I would just call both of them. I'd read him pages. We'd talk about it. And then as that was happening, Kevin would call me and he'd say, Sam, so you sure you want to shoot the movie in black and white? I said, yes. He said, okay, because I'm going to put all the film on my credit card right now, and we're just going to go. I said, great. Ash should come into the door, because my little office here and the thing. She'd say, Sam, do you mind if we I found a ranch that can house all of us. Can I put it on our credit card? I was like, absolutely not. She's like, okay, little problem. I already did. And so suddenly all this pressure just kept mounting, like, fuck, I gotta finish this script. This thing's gotta be real. And that was just the process of it. We got all of our Euphoria crew back to work with us. We designed a whole kind of, it was sort of, you know, Katia Washington, Ash, Harrison Christ, they were all working with epidemiologists, with doctors, trying to figure out how to do this safely. And we just sort of had to reverse engineer the whole piece into, you know, and it's essentially two people in a house having an argument. And that was it. I got to Carmel with 65 pages of a script. JD, Z, Ash, Kevin, and I, we all just sat down and we just started kind of reading it, putting it on its feet, kicking around ideas, talking about stuff for 10 days. And along with Marcel, our cinematographer, and out of that came the third act. And then we started shooting, and it was a 14-day shoot.
Wow, there's so much to unpack there. So
Yeah.
we will go around the horn. I wanted to start next with Ashley. So you're obviously a super accomplished producer, but I read that this was the first time that you'd worked from start to finish producing your husband. So
Yeah.
what was that like?
You know, it was beautiful. I think we felt an enormous responsibility to try to create opportunity. And so, you know, one of the things that Sam had left out about John David and why his instinct was to go to him is that he's a wonderful human being, and that we were going to create a family and take care of each other. So it was a really, it was just an incredible experience. And working alongside this group. And, you know, when we had set out to do it, we wouldn't have done it if we couldn't do it safely. And so we all looked at each other and we made a commitment that we were going to abide by the strictest of protocols that were being placed upon us from doctors. But we didn't want to take anybody out of the field either. So we knew that they had really important work to do. So we said, give us the strictest protocols, we're going to abide by them, and we're going to share those findings with our community. And I think from a personal experience, from professional experience, it will be the one that I measure all other projects against. And I have just an enormous amount of pride in how we all did this together.
That's amazing. Zendaya, this is your first producerial effort, is that right? Can you talk about how this experience changed you from actor to actor producer?
Right. This is a whole kind of new level of producing than I was ever kind of privy to. You know, back on my Disney Channel show, I was technically, you know, a producer, but I did a little bit, but it wasn't this. You know, this is something else. I think it's my first time quite literally investing in myself, you know, putting my own money into something. It's my first time building and being a part of the building of a script from like literally the first page and to where it was when we got to Carmel to where it ended up, you know, and being able to have this beautiful collaboration with people that I care about, that I trust, was so special because they also answered my questions and taught me along the way, because this is always something that I've wanted to be able to do. You know, like be like yourself, you know, like be how, you know, able to create the things I want to see. And for me, it was just such a dream opportunity. And I got to do it and be a part of every conversation, sometimes the boring ones and sometimes the scary ones and the budget ones and the, you know, all that stuff. You know, I've never been so worried about little things that I never even thought of, you know, like for me, I get to show up and I get to do my job, and I don't really think about, well, this had to be permitted and so needs this. And, you know, that's a whole another thing. And these people here are the best at it, you know? So I just, I learned, and I was also, I think, never have I been, I feel like underestimated either by my creative and producerial partners. You know, I've never felt like, oh, well, you know, you're new to this, so you don't, you know, don't work. They leaned on me the same way I leaned on them. So I felt that respect too, which is really, really special to have.
Amazing. I mean, you guys all broke the filmmaking 101 rule. Do not put your own money in the movie. But John David, obviously it worked out well. It worked out well for you guys. You went from the biggest movie of the year Tenet to the smallest, most intimate movie. Tell us, like, how does that feel? Are you raring to do this again? Was this something that you feel like is the start of something?
There is actually some parallel feelings based off of the experiences I've had on both of these films. One is the enthusiasm and the joy you must have in your approach to this thing, both on the biggest budgeted film I've ever been into to a pay-to-play one, you know? So to me, both are proof positive. Both are proof positive that you can work with people, you can be brilliant the way Sam is, and not be, you know, a jerk. You can be accommodating to people. You can find a group of people that have the same goal in mind, and you can find a common language to execute that vision, no matter the budget. You know, so you can create an environment where there's no egos, and having a producing title, you get to dictate that environment. You get to curate that environment. You get to adjust however you need to based off of everybody else that's working with you to create something as free as you want to be. And that's kind of what this film was about, is being free to express how you want. We answer to ourselves, you know, and we had complete autonomy. And honestly, it was a lot of pressure in one regard, thinking like, you know, Zendaya talked about what I want to see on a movie set. I mean, I haven't been on a lot of them. I've been on a few, and I've only seen like, you know, 2 African-American still photographers in my experience, you know, on a Spike Lee set.
And it was Dominic.
And it was Dominic. Spike Lee uses his brother, Dominic, childhood friend. So I'm like, I mean, little things like that. I just like, I didn't know you can do that from a, you know, if you have with being a producer. So
you
these
brought
guys,
Dominic in because you
they did. They trusted him. It was based off his work. They trusted him and let it and it happened. So all these experiences, I think, ultimately the common denominator was wanting to be there, loving what we do, that kind of thing, loving the art of storytelling and how we do it.
I love it. I love it. And Kevin, so, you know, I'm a p.g.a. board member. I sit on various committees. I've arbitrated the p.g.a. mark. This is a rare example of all 5 of you got the mark. And you know what a high bar that is to get the mark. I mean, the baby producers here don't know, like getting the mark is a big deal. So can you talk about how you divvied up the producerial tasks? Like, how did that all come together?
Well, it was one of those situations that organically and naturally came together just because we were such a small unit of people that it would be impossible for like one person to do it. I mean, like, you know, John David Sistercotti as a producer was also our script supervisor. Harrison Christ, who worked with, was doing craft services, and Zendaya was doing her own hair. And we all had to make these decisions, and also with the money involved, like it was just such a pressure cooker. So we just all like, you know, had to rely on each other at all times. So it was one of the few times being on the arbitration committee many times, knowing how it works. I was like, this is a no-brainer, because everyone's like 5 will never get it. I'm like, I promise you, this is a no-brainer, and it was. So it was really nice that like the p.g.a. validated that, because I know, you know, how hard it is to do so. But there's not a person on this panel that didn't have like ability.
That's awesome. That's amazing. I'm circling back to Sam, because this is it's a love story, but it's also an examination about being an artist. And being an artist means being criticized. And in this particular film, it's an examination of being a Black filmmaker. I love the references to Barry and Spike and my dear friend, John Singleton. That was really beautiful. But as a white director, as a white artist, how do you approach telling a story that centers on Black protagonists?
By having faith in the spirit of collaboration and knowing that if I write something that doesn't feel true, someone's gonna say, Sam, you know, I don't know if this works. And I think that's just, you know, that's kind of the beauty of filmmaking in general. It's why diversity is such an important aspect of filmmaking, is because it is this collision of identity, of gender, of orientation. It's all of our experiences coming together and clashing and questioning one another in the hopes that out of that rises something that feels universal and honest. And if we can capture that, then we capture something that is powerful to many people. And I think, you know, look, I think that I knew going into it that there was going to be a heightened sensitivity to it, because it is so often, historically, it hasn't been done well. I know that there's going to be a very kind of specific eye on my work in this. And so, you know, which I think is fair and completely valid. I also just knew that, you know, having worked with Z for the last, you know, 2 years on Euphoria, knowing you know, JD and his sister Katia Washington, that we were all going to figure this out together. I think I just had faith in the process and in the openness of the process. And just, I think the main thing is like making everyone feel like nothing is off the table. There's nothing you can't say. There's no question you can't ask, because we want to do this well. We want to do this right. And so you just create that kind of dialogue.
I mean, it felt very authentic. Like it didn't have any affectation. Like I was totally there. And for real, I'm talking to Zendaya now, when you have the scene where Marie acts, you totally had me. I was like, oh no, no. And then when you turned on a dime, I was like, oh my goodness. Like, was that the hard? It seemed effortless. So I'm asking, was that the hardest scene? I'm sure the answer was no, because it seemed like it was not even that hard. So what was the most difficult scene for you?
No, you nailed it. It was that one. It was that one. That one was tough for me. That was one of the scenes that came in the think tank and was produced and created while we were you know, already in Carmel, and Sam kind of springs on this scene, and then also this beautiful thank you speech at the end.
Yeah.
So that was like new material, and I was like, okay, got it. But what the beautiful thing about like that experience was, and then kind of credit to what Sam is saying is, you know, there's a real freedom and a collaboration here. And so when I got to that scene, I was already stressed out about it, because I was like, how am I going to trick my brain twice into living this, you know? And I was having a lot of trouble, you know, with the words. Like it didn't feel like it was coming out right, and it didn't feel, I felt like I was acting, and it just wasn't. I needed to trick the audience, right? I needed to feel it all the way, and in order to do that, I had to trick myself. And so Sam is incredibly patient with me, and he knows that when I get in my head too much, I can't access whatever I need to access, you know. And our crew has seen me in every version because they were with me through Euphoria, and there was a lot of patience there. And Sam was like, all right, let's rewrite it, right? So, you know, he starts, okay, what if we do say this, say that? And I was like, yeah, I like that, feels more natural, you know. I do a take of that, it's not right, you know. I'm like, it's not, it just still feels, I'm not feeling anything. I just kept saying to Sam, I'm not feeling anything. And he was like, it's okay. You know, I sit down, we sit for however many more minutes. And then he was like, you know what? Scrap everything. I don't care what's on the page. You go out there, you say whatever you need to say. I don't care if it has anything to do with the story. Just use this moment to literally let out cathartically whatever you need to, and just pretend that JD is whoever you need to talk to about this, and just let it out. So so sorry to JD. I yelled at him for an entire take until and Sam was just like, just scream, you know, and I'm just like going off. And even after that exhausting take, I still didn't get it, you know, and it was like, okay. And I was feeling really down about it, but we came back the next day, and my approach was just like, don't think about it. Just go for it. Just go into it and just don't think about it. And we kind of messed around with a new version of the words, what we had before, what we had created while we were fixing it, some things that I said naturally that came out, and it was a bunch of different things. And then it just the magic was found. But it was a tough one, but to everyone's credit, there was just, like they said, there's no egos, there's no pressure either, even though it does feel like there might be pressure. Everybody is just create such a safe space for you to just do the best kind of work that you need to do. And
It was excellent work. Thank you for that. And John David, what about you? Like shades of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf all over this thing. Two questions for you. What does it take to rev you up to go into those scenes where you're just at, 100? That's first question. Second question is, I'm curious about the choreography, because you were moving in such a way, it felt, was there a choreographer, or was that Sam? Was that you? Like, what happened there?
Yeah. Sam taught me all the dance moves, so I was just mimicking him. Those are the strongest notes he had. Were all the dance moves. It's funny, like because of with the producer title, like I felt more pressure than I ever had. I'm looking at Dominic Miller right there. I'm looking at my sister, knowing she's there. I'm like, I'm gonna make them look crazy if I don't deliver. And so I got to really, I had a whole bunch of motivation. I remember my mom, I gave the script to my mother right after I read it. And she looks up at me and after she reads it and says, Sam wrote this? And so I kept that in my head too, like, just like how special this project really is. And the words that Sam wrote, this is on you if you mess this up. This is an actor's dream. Sometimes you find yourself having to fix something, add something to. All you got to do is trust the words and look at this phenomenal actress, just get in the passenger seat and go. So that's a lot of pressure, because I can't blame anybody. It's on me if I mess it up. So that felt like a lot of pressure. The dance stuff, all the blocking was I really appreciate Marcel and Sam, because they really embraced naturalism. They let it flow, and especially with the big rant, the backyard, the house was my stage. Let it out, and the words would dictate where I would move, not the blocking. Not I'm gonna say a point here, I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna start here and then say that. It was like wherever it leads me, that's where I'm going, because that's where the emotion is in this section or outside. And that kind of freedom as an actor, I just really appreciated, and it let me get it out the right way, the proper way.
How much mac and cheese did you eat?
About 8 bowls. It was a cleanser.
So talk about it, Ashley or Kevin, this beautiful, beautiful location, the Caterpillar House. Well, how did you find it, and how did you move? Did you guys move into that space? What was the story behind that?
We didn't. We actually we worked with local real estate agents in the area, and between Marcel and Sam, we looked at 1,500 houses.
What?
So finally, we reversed that, and our production designer, Michael Gracely, said, let's look for an incredible architect we love, and then see what work they have around that area. And so we did, and we would send shots to JD and Z. Does this look like your house? Does this look like where you live? And what Marcel had brought up was, because we have such limited resources, we should actually find something that the producers put them up in. So it's not actually their home, and there's a distance to it emotionally, but that it could function the way we needed it to. So there was big walls that would open all the way up, and that would allow us to have more people around, because we were abiding by these protocols. And we were on 33 acres of land. So it also allowed us a lot of security to be able to push out, light the trees in the exterior. And Jonathan Feldman, who's the architect of the space, he studied film, interestingly. And so the moment we stepped into the house, and Z brought all of our clothes, and JD has his suitcase. I mean, we literally, everybody brought in their cars things to make this work. And it clicked in. And it lent itself like a stage.
It definitely felt that way. It was beautiful. Just so many nooks and crannies, and it felt like a lot of the action happened in that living room, but the sense of the whole rest of the house was it felt like you guys were everywhere in that house. It was pretty spectacular. This is kind of a primer on how to make your own movie. I think people will probably study this movie literally as a case study of how to do it yourself. Kevin, what did you learn from working with such a small crew where people were doubled up and you know, I understand there wasn't really a costume designer. You guys used your stylists and had a lot of say in that. Was it liberating? Do you feel like this is something that you literally want to do again?
It was incredibly liberating in that we kind of knew that we had a certain amount of time, we had no schedule, and we had to make a film. And we all kind of like we're all in it together. So everybody played multiple roles, and it felt like film school, and it felt like summer camp with the task, and everybody was just kind of so happy. And you know, we all really, it was so nice that everybody had the same focus. But it also made you realize just like how important crew members are, like not having a script supervisor and having like 3 people, David's sister, Harrison, myself, Ashley, everybody being a script supervisor. I go, it makes you appreciate just how incredible jobs are and just how hard it is when you have one dolly grip, you know, and you realize like, just like, you know, there are ways to make films. You can make them at all levels. It's just like, you know, like you really have to reconfigure everything per the purpose and scope and make it like exactly what it's supposed to be. So it was definitely the most kind of creative experience I've ever had as a producer, and the most communal.
Did you shoot in sequence?
Yeah, so
we did.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about the first couple of days, Sam.
Yeah. So it's funny because I remember turning to Marcel at one point early on, like in the middle of, you know, prep when we were all just sitting there, and I was like, I feel like who's like the person that like could help us organize things? Like we, you know, we forgot, like,
AD.
Yeah, and then it was like, oh, that's right. Or
Not one of those.
So
resetting mac and cheese was a big one.
Yeah, but so we came into this, and Marcel and I, it was a 10-day shoot originally, and we were going to shoot in sequence. We get there, we start shooting. We realize that we've told nobody anything about what we were planning to do. So we're just like, let's put the dolly here. And it's all in Marcel and I's heads. Everyone else is going, wait, what are we doing next? And we're like, the next shot. They go, I don't know. Anyway, so we shoot the whole first day. Everything's on the dolly, very well choreographed. We wanted it to be like a Preminger film, you know? And by the end of the day, Marcel and I get into the car with Ash. She's driving the car. We're there. I look at Marcel, I go, this isn't working. It's too clean. It feels like a whiskey commercial or something. There's no life in it. He's like, I completely agree. This is a disaster. You know, we wake up the next morning. We're there. We're talking on the ride to there. And Marcel says, we should shoot the whole movie handheld. It should be like bullet ballet. It should be handheld, black and white. You never see that. I'm like, that's a fantastic idea. Ash is saying, so what are you saying? I'm saying, we're going to throw out the first day. She's like, all right, now we only have 9 days. I get the set. I call JD and Z. I go, everything we did yesterday, you guys were wonderful. It was our fuck up. We're going to throw out the whole thing. We want it to be messier things. I'm explaining, I'm convinced. They're like, JD's like, everything? I'm like, everything. So he's like, okay, 30 takes out the door. We shoot everything that day, handheld. It's messy. It's got all that kind of stuff. I'm looking at Marcel at the end of the day. He's got a 1,000-foot mag. He's lost 10 pounds. He's sweating. We go, I shake my head. He shakes his head. We get into the car with Ash, and I go, this isn't working. There's no design. He goes, it's just a total disaster. Ash says, what are you guys saying? I said, we're going to throw out the second day. And she's like, are you kidding me? I said, babe, look, I'm talking to you just as my producer right now. I need you to fight for more days. She's like, let's see what we can do. We decide to just move on the next day. We get to the next day. I didn't want to tell JD and Z that we're going to throw everything out because I feel too guilty. We set up for that outside dolly shot. And that's finally, it was like, I said to Marcel, I said, I think this is our opening shot. This is how we play the whole thing. Because now we can see that it's one world. And inside of that world are 2 people who are having very different emotional experiences. And there's an objectivity to it that feels right. Marcel says, I totally agree, but the sun's coming up in an hour. It's June. There's 8.5 hours in a night. What are we going to do? So we're all laying dolly track. Ash is kicking in wedges with Kunkel. Kadi is out there laying track, everything. We get this thing going. I say to JD and Z, I'm like, we got to do this. We got an hour till the sun comes up. Let's nail it. And we end up pulling it off. We pull off that shot. We did 3 takes. And at the end of the take, I could see the mag is running out and I'm screaming, Z, pick up the mac and cheese. She picks it up and we end up with one foot left in there. And that's kind of how we did it. And that's the take that's in the movie. But we ended up having to get an extra couple of days. So it turned from a 10-day shoot to a 14-day shoot. But
talk about the black and white. It was so beautiful. Why black and white? What made you choose that?
I think a couple of reasons. First of all, I'm always trying to get away from like documentary style realism and things like that. But in preparation for it, just going through it with Marcel, we're looking at movies like you just mentioned, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. We're also looking at La Nota. We're looking at Joseph Losey's The Servant, movies that I think, took place in kind of really beautiful locations, things like that, movies that inspired us. And as we're looking at it, I'm going, every single person in all these movies is white. And by the time, Black people started getting opportunities in this business, black and white filmmaking had sort of fallen out of favor. Now, there's obviously Spike Lee, Charles Burnett, there's filmmakers who've done this before. But it felt like because this is a movie about Hollywood, because it's about the industry, and it is an examination of the industry, that it felt right to kind of reappropriate that golden age of Hollywood look, that timelessness of black and white, and allow these two actors to exist in that timelessness. So it was an aesthetic choice, but it was an emotional one, I think, mainly.
It was beautiful. I mean, and how'd you make that dress sparkle in black and white? That's what I want to know. That was incredible.
We did, it was like Law, who's been my stylist since I was like 14. I was so excited that he could be now like a costume designer as well. And we kind of, sent back and forth a lot of references because Sam had this like idea in his head of this specific kind of dress. And we wanted the silhouette to be like an iconic silhouette. And we wanted it also to like, feel kind of glamorous and mature, but also still have a fun youthfulness to it as well. Like, I don't know, it couldn't be too formal, so it was, we played with a lot of different silhouettes, and Law found an incredible black designer who I've worn before to kind of custom make it for us. And they would send sketches, and then Sam and I would send them back to Law, and then Law would send a big box of different materials that we tested in the parking lot when we did our camera test. To see which one
all
really.
In Carmel. This is all in Carmel.
Wow. And everything had to be shipped back and forth, obviously, because we've created this bubble, so we couldn't come in contact with anybody. So we held up the different materials, and there's just one perfect kind of metallic silver kind of. It was just perfect the way like it. Sometimes it didn't. It shined in certain ways that it hit the body, and it was just the right amount of heaviness and lightness. Like it was perfect. And then they sent it back, and then they sent it again, and then they send us the addresses and did alterations. Thank goodness Melissa was with us, and she was able to alter it while we were there. And then the dress was born. But it was interesting. I was actually talking a lot about this the other day. About how normally with that dress, like we wouldn't think to put tights underneath it, right? But Sam had always written that she had these tights, and to us it just ended up being like this iconic thing, specifically when the dress drops of like the line in the back, and there's like it all just kind of came together and created this beautiful look that realistically would she probably come home and change immediately? Yeah, we had that conversation too, but it looked too good. And, this is the glamour of what we do. So we needed to keep her in that dress for a little bit longer, but it was really fun kind of going back and forth and finding the right thing, because it really is important.
And John David, your suit was also very iconic. I felt like that tie was on for a really long time, it was like, what was happening with you and your wardrobe?
Well, shout out to Samantha, who she couldn't be there. It was the first Zoom fitting I think I've ever had. And we're talking about all hands on deck. Katya and Dominic helped with the alterations, and she was coaching them through, wow. So he's still photography. He's taking the pictures and helping pin the stuff, and then we send it back. And so so shout out to Prada too for helping us out. And just, it was something about, like, I felt like it was his armor. I wanted it to have a certain feel. Like when I used to play ball, there was a certain way I put my pads on and the jersey fit, like I'm gonna have a good game today, you know. And this is, I imagine a character that, you know, he has his wardrobe people from his films that he just was able to source and get a suit like this for his big night. And as the argument continues to grow, as he becomes more in his feelings, he starts to take his clothes off. He starts to, you know, she's cracking the armor, you know, and there's something about the tie flip before he eats the mac and cheese where you're not going to get me yet. I'm putting all this energy into this food. Like I'm a Neanderthal, but I still look good, you know? So it was just fun to be able to play around with those sorts of things.
That's amazing. God, they're telling us we're running out of time, but I have a couple more things, which is, for me, this movie is about gratitude. It's about, you know, recognizing the people around you, giving thanks to the people around you, which is so appropriate, I think, for these times that we're living in. So I just wanted to thank you guys for making a movie about that. I also read that the key crew shared in the profits of the film, which I think is right on. And also that you donated some of those profits to Feeding America. Kevin, why was that important? Oh, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about it. We knew that we wanted to give a portion during these tough times to charity, and it was kind of a very easy decision. We're like, what's the most primal? People need food. Let's give to Feeding America. We found it to be just an incredible organization that has a great way of, like, their output, the way they handle things, or everything is first rate. So it was probably the easiest decision we made the whole film.
Wow. Yeah, bravo. It's great. It's a great movie. It's a great story about how this movie came together. It's a great story about how you all producers worked together and had double jobs throughout the whole thing. I'm just so impressed. And, you know, it's also a movie about competition, and it's a movie about jealousy, and it's a movie about, you know, artists bucking heads. So in that, I just want to say thank you for it. I want to thank the p.g.a. for sponsoring this, and also for Netflix, our, you know, erstwhile movie theater while we can't be at movie theaters. Did I miss anything? I feel like we could go on forever because there's so many. Wait, one last thing, the music. Oh my God, the music was so important. Like, just from that opening song when you're actually singing on camera, John David,
Yeah.
to, you know, Duke Ellington, like the music was so eclectic, and yet it felt so like on point, like throughout, like a character, like the music was kind of, was a way of talking between characters when they weren't talking in some ways. Like, what, can somebody just say something about the music, Sam?
I think, yeah, I mean, look, I've always been a huge fan of that opening track, Down and Out in New York City by James Brown. It was originally used in a movie called Black Caesar, directed by Larry Cohen. It's a movie I love. It's a brilliant film, very kind of amazing independent film. There was always a music edit in the movie that drove me a little bit nuts at the beginning of it. So I was always determined, since I first saw it, to use that entire track without any music edits in it. And it just felt like a great way to understand the high that this character is coming in on. Throughout the process, I think I love music. I love the way that it can communicate what we feel without words. I thought it was important to sometimes allow the characters to try to communicate what they feel through different songs. So William Bell's I Forgot to Be Your Lover was written in there. Dionne Warwick's Get Rid of Him was written in there. And then also at the same time, like my editor who I work with, one of my closest collaborators, Julio Perez, just a true genius, has an encyclopedic knowledge of music. We're always just trading things back and forth. And look, I got to give him credit for Ellington, Sentimental Mood. I think that was his own kind of hat tip to Love Jones. You know, he absolutely, when I heard that piece come in, it was, and because we weren't able to be in the edit room together, but when I saw that scene and she finally says, and they're on the couch, it just, this wave of emotion and romanticism he was able to pull out of it and find the kind of commonality and the humor between these two characters. So a lot of credit to him and Jen Malone, our music, JD.
Yeah.
We would have long, JD and Marcel and myself would have long hip hop discussions in Carmel.
Very passionate discussions.
Yeah, Marcel was from Budapest, but he grew up on New York hip hop and has very strong opinions.
Queens specifically, Queens hip hop artists. Encyclopedic knowledge of Queens rappers. It was really, it blew me away. I couldn't believe it. He put me on.
Yeah. Like I remember the day we wrapped, I think it was the day we wrapped that JD just sent me Liberation by Outkast, which is a song I love. I hadn't heard in a while. I sent it over to Julio, our editor, and I never heard anything back from Julio. I'd call him, we'd check in about different things. And when I saw the first cut of the film and Liberation ended it, I was like, this is fucking perfect. I don't care if someone wants to come to us with an original song. I don't care who it is. This song is staying in this film. It was just too good.
That's so beautiful. And I love the way you ended it with the beautiful thank yous. You know, I feel like everybody should go through their list of thank yous to everybody they know, everybody they love, and like end on that. So I'm thanking you guys for making an amazing movie. Thank you for spending
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you. Thank you.
This was an honor. Thank you for doing this. This is great.
Thank you
It was
so
super
much.
fun. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Okay.
See you next time. Bye.
My God.
Bye.